Okay guys, welcome to today's wealth creation show, and today I'm going to cover the topic of the creative process. Now, anyone who's in running a business, any entrepreneurs, people who are on their wealth creation journey and things, the creative process is something that's a big part of that. Your creativity and your innovation and things are the things that constantly push you forward. So I thought it was a really good topic to cover today, and done a wee bit of research into how all the different factors of the creative process and how that could help us along. Creativity and ideas and things, they don't really come on command as such, and they sometimes spring up when you least expect them, and take you in different directions. So, and these are the things that generally will show us the way, but obviously the creativity and that behind that is a big part of it. If you were speaking to maybe one of your friends and things, and ask them to think up something creative on the spot, then they'll probably look at you a little bit bewildered. And so you can't really, it's not something that really happens on the spot as such when you're asked, but these kind of creativity and things flow when you least expect it. And it would be fair to say that it's probably a bit of an elusive process. But there are ways of harnessing that, and as I say, researching and looking into that, I thought was quite an interesting topic to cover today. And when I looked into that, it really generally always comes back to how you use your brain. And using your brain is so important, and using it in the correct way. Now, it's been researched and things into how your brain works. And I mean, it's not factual, but we'll cover it today because I think it's quite interesting. But it is believed that your brain has two halves that control different modes within your body and of thinking. And this kind of hypothesis or theory was it was spearheaded up by a guy called Roger Sperry. He actually won a Nobel Prize and things for this, but it's really interesting, and I'm sure probably people have heard of it, but I'll cover it today just obviously for the topic of what we're talking about today, and obviously of some interest. And your left side and your right side of your brain, it's said that they control different modes and processes of thinking. So your left side of your brain is the more logical, sequential and kind of rational side. It analyzes and the objective side, and breaks things into parts, and it's quite that logical side of it. Whereas your right side of the brain, it's a lot more random and intuitive, and it synthesizes, and it's a bit more subjective and looks at things in a whole as opposed to your logical side, which breaks things up into logical kind of parts. So I thought that was quite interesting. Now, let's not get carried away and think that we've got two brains. That's not what I'm saying, and it's not what the theory is trying to explain. It's just saying obviously different parts of your brain control different thought processes and things as well. So your left side of your brain, as I say, is concerned with the logical thinking and analysis and the kind of the accurate side, while the right side focuses on the aesthetics and the feelings and that creativity that we're talking about. So it seems like the right half of your brain is the kind of creative friend, as we'll call it, while the right side's maybe plotting against that, because obviously you could be quite creative and emotional, but when your logical side takes over, it overrides that feeling and takes you in a different direction. So they kind of play against each other a wee bit. And I'm sure everybody's been in a situation or circumstances where they feel like that, where they're, and this is where I probably think the expression your head over your heart, it's not really your heart, it's your interesting topic could do that as well. So new ideas come from breaking out of the norm as such, and ignoring the limits and the facts, and venturing outside the box generally. Whereas the left side of the brain, on the other hand, like I say, analyzes and sorts stuff and dwells into the detail a bit more, generally kind of sabotaging that creative thinking. So basically, we want to involve the right side of your brain and numb the left side, as much as possible if you're trying to be creative, that is. So, but always remember that, do you know that a good way to do this is brainstorming. You've done this probably through your education years and things as well, but it's a big part of a creative process is to brainstorm. Do you know when things are not quite in production, things don't need to be perfectly logical. At that point, you're just kind of putting ideas together and trying to find the best way to navigate through whatever you're doing. So brainstorm is a really good way to do that. Do you know it's a good way of extracting stuff from your brain, because you're just randomly putting things down that you think are relevant, and then you could discount things and then think, oh, that's good. So it's just basically pulling all of that stuff out of your brain. And it gives you a bit more of a tangible kind of medium to work with, rather than everything being in your head. It's down, everything that's in your head is down on paper as such. And then you could find that kind of maybe that seed or that idea that will, do you know, that'll pull things together, or think, right, this is where we're going to go and this is what we're going to lead with. And the trick is to teach yourself to ignore the rules and the conventions, or the must be things that your logical side of your brain will probably push you to think about all the time. So even if, I mean, a lot of the time, even if you don't have a clue what you're doing, you can't escape your unconsciousness, and it does move in kind of mysterious ways and affects you in kind of mysterious ways as well. So your brain's a really powerful thing, but not everybody's quite sure how it completely works. So, do you know, that's what I thought was a good topic for us to go through today and talk about in a wee bit more depth if we could. As I say, this is just, obviously, I have looked into this with some information I've pulled from online and things as well, and credible people from previous that I've put together this information, and I thought it'd be quite good to pull it out and have a wee discussion about it. But do you know, after a while, nice ideas do start to surface when you start brainstorming and things, and it might not happen right away. Do you know, people go through a whole process and feel like they're just treading water or not even getting anywhere. But you need to train your brain to kind of sort your thinking process. Especially if you're a lot of people are a lot more logical than they are obviously creative, and a lot of people are more creative than they are logical. Do you know? And it's hard to find that happy medium. But do you know, if you keep at it, it should help you to eventually get to where you're going and find the right ideas to help propel you forward. Do you know, good ideas, they say, if good ideas were cheap, we would all be rich, as I think the saying goes. So, do you know, they don't just come to you on the spot. You need to really sometimes brainstorm and go through that process. And then in time, you'll have a bunch of ideas. Some might work, some you might shred, but it's all part of the process. And I think that's the important thing. And if you're going through that process of, you know, brainstorming and trying to pull ideas together, it can sometimes become a wee bit overwhelming and think that you're not making any headway or getting anywhere with where you want to be. So always remember, it's fine to maybe just stop, take a step back, especially when you're brainstorming for a while and you need to kind of take a step back and let things settle in your mind. If you go too fast, you know, you make mistakes and you could go completely off track. You know, I know people that are so busy in their lives and work so hard and don't take times for things like sleep. And sleep's a big thing. If you don't get enough sleep, your brain won't function the way it should. And sleep is an excellent way to kind of just recharge. And that's where they're saying, you know, sleep on it and think about it tomorrow. And always, if I'm trying to think about something or find the answer for something, or maybe the best way to approach something, the worst things to do is to go in hastily and respond or deal with it straight away. Think, right, okay, I'll come back to that. Have a wee think about it. Right, okay, I'll come back to that tomorrow. I'll sleep on it. Do you know? And while you're sleeping, your subconsciousness will go through all the information from that day or from the previous day or whatever. Do you know, everything that's assembled, and it will sort through it and kind of chew through the stuff that, and you won't even realize that you are, because you'll sleep on it, wake up, and when you wake up the next day, you're like, that's the answer. And I'm sure it's happened to a lot of people, and it definitely has happened to me. Do you know, if you've got something as well, it's like they say, put it in a box and come back to it. Even physically write it on a bit of paper, put it in a box and come back to it. And when you read it again or come back to that issue, you will probably immediately have the answer, because you're subconsciously working on it out with your normal, obviously, thought processes. So when you wake up the next morning after sleeping on something, you do usually have things figured out, and it's a really good way to do that. So sleep, that just demonstrates how sleep is so important. And similarly, when you've been working on maybe a project for too long, or working on something endlessly for hours and hours, it's easy to get a bit blindsided as well. Sometimes it's not quite right that you just figure out what it is, or you just can't figure out what it is, should I say. But another scenario in that is you think it's possibly, maybe it's perfect, and then release it, and then after a couple of days you find out you need to sort some real big mistakes because you've went in too quickly, and then it would probably make sense in hindsight. And hindsight's a great thing. You should have maybe taken a quick break, take a step back, let your brain do a bit of thinking, subconsciously come back, finish it, and then execute whatever it is, and then you would have avoided these things that you need to go back and change. So I think that's a wee bit of an example of how to really approach some things in your creative process, and taking that time to take a step back, let your brain breathe, as I would say. But yeah, I think it's quite a good approach to think about your mind in two halves, the logical and the creative kind of side. And I think it is definitely something that people will experience that plays off each other. Now, I was going to cover today, to go hand in hand with the whole brainstorming and brain process, that the 5 stages of the creative process. Now, not my 5 stages, obviously I took this from someone else a lot more experienced than myself, from the techniques and preceding a technique of producing ideas. It's a book where I took it from. And in 1940, an advertising executive named James Webb Young published this book, and this is where I got the 5 stages of creative process from. And I thought it was really relevant to what I wanted to cover today. And as I say, a technique for producing ideas. If you want to get the link to that book, I'll be happily share that. It's on Amazon, you could find it. It's quite good, and it's called A Technique of Producing Ideas. And it's kind of like a guide. And in this guide, he has made a simple but profound statement about generating creative ideas. Now, according to Young, innovative ideas happen when you develop, new combinations of maybe old elements. And in other words, creative thinking is not about generating something new from a blank slate, just from completely, but rather than taking what is already present and combining those bits of things and pieces in a way that has not been done previously. So a lot of people think, creative ideas and coming up with something has to be completely brand new. But really, why not take something that's already maybe in your mind or already out there and make it better, or look at ways to make it better? Most importantly, I think it's the ability to generate new combinations, and that hinges on people's ability to see the relationship between different concepts and things as well. And he really delves into it in this book, and it's quite a good, as I say, it's a guide. And if you could form a new link between, older ideas, then you've ultimately done something creative. And that's a really good way to look at it, rather than thinking I need to think of something completely new off the slate that no one's ever thought about before, because the chances are somebody's probably thought about most things before, maybe just not in the way that you do. So that is a really good way to be creative, is to develop and work on something that's already there. Young believed that this process of creative connection, as we'll say, always occurred in 5 steps, and that's the 5 steps I was going to cover with you today. The first step is general new material. Now, at first, you learn during the stages, you focus on one thing, as learning specific material directly related to whatever your task is. And then secondly, learning general material by becoming fascinated with a wide range of different concepts. So that was the first thing. So generating new material, as I say, which can be done. But then the second thing was thoroughly work over what material you have in your mind. And this is where we talk about brainstorming and things. And during that stage, you'll think about examining what you have learned by looking at facts from maybe different angles and experimenting with fitting various ideas together. Do you know? And that's what I was saying about looking at combining bits and pieces in the best way. So yeah, so thoroughly working through that material, and that is definitely the brainstorming stage, and how everything marries up together. The third step was to step away from your problems, and that's the taking a step back thing. Do you know, you put the problem completely out of your mind and go and do something else. Maybe something that maybe excites you, energizes you. Do you know, whether you go to the gym, whether you go exercise, or whether it's just socializing or spending time with your family, or something that completely takes your mind off it. Or indeed, as I say, go away and sleep on it. But take that step back from whatever the problem is or whatever the challenge you're looking at in that creative process. And when you come back to it, you should have a lot better perspective and probably the answer more than likely. Number 4 is let your idea return to you. At some point, but only after you've really stopped thinking about it, your idea will come back to you with, you know, that flash of insight and that kind of renewed energy. And you'll kind of be recharged and a completely new focus on the topic. So let it return to you. Don't force it, I think, is probably the best thing to say with that point. And you should be able to have a completely fresh outlook on that. The fifth one is to shape and develop your idea based on feedback. Feedback's so important in anything that you do. Do you know, whether you're in business, whether you're doing things on a personal level, do you know, even if you're on a fitness journey, do you know, to get feedback from somebody that's a lot more successful in what you're doing is so important in order for you to develop and hone your skill to make it better. For any idea to succeed, you must release it into the world and see what feedback you get. And sometimes a lot of people could shy away from that, but you really need to submit it to the world for criticism, basically, and adapt it as it's needed. Because the only way you're ever going to really find out is to put it out there. And I think the saying "done is better than perfect" is probably a good one to associate with this. Some people try and perfect things so much that they take so much time it never actually gets put out there. But once you put something out there, get a bit of feedback, maybe do some changes, and you know, and it's really honing that skill and that product or service or whatever you're trying to provide. You need to get feedback, and that's why customer feedback and things when you're in business is so important, because you don't know you're doing a good job until somebody tells you that the service you're doing is what they were looking for. Now, you're never going to please everybody. I'll always be aware of that. But generally, if you're getting the right feedback, then it's good. And if it's criticism, use it constructively. And I think that's the most important thing. Feedback is really great. So yeah, the 5 stages there. So generate, gather new material, thoroughly work through your material in your mind. Always take that time to step back from your problem or whatever and come back to it. Let the idea then return to you is number 4. And number 5 is to shape and develop your idea based on the feedback. Feedback, as I say, is one of the most key important things there. So yeah, I hope a lot of people will kind of resonate with what I'm talking about and relate to that creative process, and especially how your mind plays against each other from these 2 sides, as we say, the logical and creative side. And this whole creative process, and it's so important to anybody that's trying to be successful and generate something that's worthy of their time and their effort, and any line of work that you're doing, do you know, and if you're trying to build wealth and you're on that journey, then this creative process is so important, and that feedback for what you're doing is really important as well. Just to kind of break it down, obviously the creative process in short, I'll call it. I mean, the creative process acts, and the act of that is making new connections between old ideas, as I said. And we could say creative thinking as maybe a task of recognizing relationships between different concepts. like what Young demonstrates in that book. As I say, a technique of producing ideas. The book from James Webb Young is really quite a good read, and as I say, it's a good guide for anyone who is in that creative process stage of any kind of business venture. That it's worthwhile, and I could put the link in the comments for that book. As I say, it's on Amazon. But yeah, so recognizing that relationship between the concepts and things. One way to approach creative challenges is by following these 5 steps that Young covers. And as I say, gathering material, intensely working over the material in your mind, stepping away from the problem, allowing the idea to come back to you quite naturally, and testing your idea in the real world. And it's the best way. And then you could adjust it based on the feedback. It really is the best way to find out if what you're doing is what you need to be doing. And I won't say the right way to do it, but it's what you need to be doing to attract and please your target audience as such. That's a really important thing of business and any creative process. And being creative isn't about being the first. This is, I think, a really important thing as well. It isn't about being the first and being this is completely brand new. A person who thinks of an idea, it's usually based on something that's been thought about before. And more often than not, creativity is about connecting the old ideas with the new and making it more relevant for the time that you're in. I mean, a lot of things have been thought about by a lot more successful people previously, but it might not completely relate to this time or this era as such where you are. So you've got a different audience, you've got a different, your target audience has got a different thought process and a different approach to that. So that's a really good thing to think about, that you're not always having to pull completely new ideas from your brain. Look at what's been done before and how you could adapt it and change it. And that is ultimately being creative as well. So that's a really important point. And I think I'll wrap up on that one. But yeah, the 5 points is a really good thing. And if you want Young's book, you could get that on Amazon. And that is a technique of producing ideas, which is a really good book. And I'll leave it there. Obviously, thanks for everybody that's tuned in. Any questions, please jump in the comments if this is a rerun, and I'll happily come back to you. If you want me to send you the link to the book on Amazon, I could do that, but I'll leave it there today, and until next time, I will see you all on the Wealth Creation Show next Monday. Jim will be joining me next week. It'll be both of us, and we will be talking about collaboration. So that'll be a really good topic for us to discuss with you guys. And until then, I will see you Monday, 12:30 as usual. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.